Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm Erik and I'm in Tri-Cities, Washington, in the southeast part of the state.
We have a special guest for this episode. Every week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, those games were at PAX East in Boston, where I got to hang out with Erik and play a ton of video games and stand in a lot of lines and use a lot of hand sanitizer.
Yes, we used a lot of hand sanitizer.
Just a ridiculous amount of hand sanitizer.
One of us even ran out of it.
I did. I emptied, for the first time in my life, emptied a bottle of hand sanitizer. It's never been done before. So yeah. DJ is sitting this episode out. He didn't go to PAX. Decided to turn the reins over to me and Erik for this episode. You've been on the show before, right? I think talking about PAX last time, right?
Yeah, I have been on the show a couple times. The two other times went to PAX East. We recorded stuff. And then the one time DJ and I met up at PAX South, we also recorded a piece as well.
Excellent. You're the Video Game Hangover PAX buddy.
Yay, I have a purpose.
Your purpose is so clear now.
Yes.
Excellent. So, did you have a nice PAX?
I did. It was pretty good. I was thinking about today that I'm really, really glad I didn't touch any of the VR stuff. I remember we walked by and there were a few developers demoing stuff in the free play area, and I see them wiping it down. I'm like, no, I am not going to put that anywhere near my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is a kind of a weird year to go to a convention center and hang out with, I don't know, pick a number, 90,000 other gamers. So with, sort of virally speaking, there's a lot happening in the world right now. I was a little nervous, and I think we made a lot of jokes sort of at the expense of that nervousness about participating in this thing, but it was exciting to see all of the precautions that people were taking, that developers were taking, that the convention center was taking to do what they could to try to keep us all safe.
There was I saw lots of the staff like double and triple cleaning everything, and there was like hand sanitizer everywhere, and people, instead of like shaking hands and high-fiving, were elbow bumping. I thought that was pretty neat.
Correct, yes.
People were aware. There were some people running around with masks. I mean, I don't know if that really would have protected you, but if it makes you feel safer, so be it. But just the best thing to do is wash your hands and just
I've heard the mask doesn't do anything. Just washing your hands a lot does. Yeah, the antibacterial hand wipes do a lot. We saw tons of devs have the pop-up bottles of the Clorox wipes. And at any time anybody was swapping out controllers or between demos or anything like that, they were wiping down stations and wiping down controllers.
I witnessed a guy sneezing on a keyboard, and then he left, and then they ran over there from the booth, and they like double wiped it down really quick. And I did not use that station. I used the next one. But still, they're paying attention.
What kind of monster would sneeze on a keyboard? That's terrible.
Somebody who doesn't care.
I watched at one point I did the Animal Crossing demo, which I will talk about later in the show, and I'm not sure how fascinating the antiviral protocols of the PAX experience are to our listeners, but they were swapping out between play sessions, and they had just this army of Nintendo employees. There was one per station between plays would pull out Clorox wipes and just had to wipe down everything, and they were doing that 12 hours a day, 4 days this year. It was pretty inspiring to see just how much work and effort went into the illusion of safety.
Yeah, trying to keep people healthy at least. And there were some developers and some companies that backed down. Capcom decided not to come. Square Enix, Sony, that was the big one.
Sony's the big one, yeah.
PUBG. I don't know if EA usually doesn't come to these things, but 2K usually comes, and they weren't there. But
Ubi usually comes, they weren't there. I'm not sure if they backed out because of the coronavirus craziness, but a lot of the big publishers and developers no Microsoft, that are usually there, that take up a ton of space in the convention center, were not there this year. Do you feel like the show was better or worse for it, or their absence was barely noticed?
For me, it was better, because I'm like, I don't have to go try to get in line at Sony to play Iron Man VR or Last of Us 2, which I really wanted to play.
That's the one I wanted to play too. That was a big disappointment.
I would have fought through those lines, but at the same time, by not being there, freed up more time to go check out the indie stuff, which is, as PAX is come and go, it's usually one of the things I'm really drawn to is the indie stuff, because most developers are there. They're going to talk about their games. You get lots of time to play. You can always come back around. There's usually not too much of a line. Bethesda
Yeah.
Bethesda was there actually. They were in the hotel next door, downstairs. I did not
Oh,
know
they
about
took it
this
off
till
site,
after I
huh?
left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had a little thing. They were showing Doom and I think Fallout 76. I don't know what they're showing Fallout 76. Maybe new content, but
There's a new thing. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't do it. I heard about it
neither did
after I
I.
had already left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
I was at the airport on the way home, and people were like, "Hey, I found Bethesda." Yeah. So yeah, I think it was. I was a little better for it too. It gave us a little more breathing room on the show floor. It certainly didn't feel empty by any stretch, particularly on Saturday. Man, it just felt like
Oh,
we were packed in there.
Saturday. Ooh.
Saturday was intense. Yeah.
The first 2 days were not too bad. The first 2 days were okay. I could definitely walk around without running into people, but Saturday there were tons of people there.
It was a lot. And it didn't help that, like, at that point I was tired and my feet hurt and I was a little hangry. And yeah, it was just a lot of people.
The angry part. I need food.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, it was cool to, I don't know, be forced by circumstance to spend more time playing, unusual indie games. And I think it probably worked out better for the indie developers that they got to be, a bigger focal point for gamers rather than, like you said, waiting in line for 4 hours to play The Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those things are fun. I was prepared to wait for Last of Us, but...
I would have waited up to 2, maybe 2.5.
That's like your limit, yeah.
I mentally prepared myself, remembering how much I enjoyed waiting in line to play the first game in the demo of PAX West. And I was like, all right, if it's 2 hours, I'm just going to deal with it, but it's going to be worth it, and they'll probably give cool swag. And they weren't there, so I was like, all right, well, go do something else.
As if to make it even more, annoying that they weren't there, that Sony wasn't there, that they still paid for all the marketing. So there were still giant banners and video monitors and a huge sign out front of the convention center showing Last of Us ads, but there's no place inside to play it. So,
and how on the map of the convention, where all the booths are and everything, there was Sony. I'm like, Sony's not there. There's just kind of some empty space to kind of put in some other things.
Just a black hole. Yep.
Black hole. Nah, they kind of made use of the space. I think they gave people other companies more space.
Yeah, it would really been really weird if there was a big empty spot. We found an empty spot at some point on the show floor. It's like, I wonder if this is the space.
I think that's where Sony and Microsoft were going to be. There were some gaps. It didn't look like that much, but it was definitely noticeable.
Yeah, but yeah, a little more breathing room. So yeah. PAX. It was fun. It's a good time. It's I don't know. I sort of love hate it every year. I 100% like
agree.
going and playing video games. I like seeing cool new things that are coming. I like getting to, like you said, talk to developers. It's cool to go to the indie mega booth or the indie mini booth, and have somebody put a controller in your hand to try their game, and they're the person who made that game. I don't have a lot of opportunities in my life to actually talk to a person who makes a video game for a living, despite talking about video games as much as I do. So that is really, really cool.
And they can answer all your questions and everything, and they're usually more than willing to take the time to talk to you about their game, and they're excited that you like it. That's the thing I always enjoy. They're like, and I never try to be critical when I'm there too. I always want to play the game, and I'm looking forward to, like, what'd you like about it? What didn't you like? We're still working on stuff. And you're like, it's very, very
that was one of my, sort of the questions I asked a lot, because sometimes you can't quite get hands-on with games, but you can kind of stand in the perimeter, you can kind of stand off to the side and watch somebody else demoing a game, and there's inevitably somebody roaming around that has an exhibitor badge on, or a Devolver t-shirt on, or whatever. Pick a name of a publisher or developer here, and I always go, so what am I looking at? And they have their pitch. They have their, like, here's the game I made, and here's what it does, and here's what we're doing, and here's what this guy is doing. Oh, he missed a thing when he went. So yeah, I don't know. I like that interaction. I like the opportunity to get somebody who made the thing to talk about the thing. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you? How was that when you were playing Animal Crossing? Did you get a chance to ask any questions or anything? You were just like, no, this is it. I'm in the zone.
The internet has been really, really good at sort of answering any kind of advanced questions and picking apart all the trailers and videos and stuff like that for Animal Crossing. So by the time they kind of put the controller in my hand and I got to sort of roam around an island for a bit, I had a pretty good sense of what I was getting myself into. Plus, it's Animal Crossing. It's not significantly different from the previous games in terms of sort of gameplay or substance. The thing that was odd about the Animal Crossing demo is that it was a multiplayer demo. It wasn't a situation where you were on an island and left to your own devices. Yeah, there were 4 of us. One of the players was a Nintendo employee, and there was me and 2 other folks who just were randos, who were strangers, who were other PAX goers. And we all took turns being kind of the party leader in a multiplayer session. And it was kind of fun the way that you sort of swapped kind of leadership responsibility just by waggling the controller, and it would put up a little icon above everybody's head, and it says, "Do you want to be the leader? Push A." And then somebody else would sort of pick themselves, and they would then be in charge. And they were the one who controlled.
Take the lead, then you do your thing, and they just kind of go with you, and you like kind of give them a little bit of direction when you need help.
Yeah, the camera focuses on them, so you have to kind of keep up with them. If you fall behind the leader, the camera will zoom you to catch up with them. They're the only ones who can go into buildings. So if the leader goes into a building, he brings everybody, or he or she brings everybody with them. So it just determines kind of who is essentially kind of hosting the session. So yeah, we all got an opportunity to sort of like indulge. What do you want to do for the 5 minutes that you're the leader? So for me, it was about checking out some of the crafting stuff. And our host was like, "Oh, that's kind of fun. You should definitely see what what recipes you have access to." So I pulled up my menu, and it showed that I had a blueprint for how to make a log fire on the beach. So we hacked down a couple of trees and picked up a bunch of wood, and we all made a log fire and put them all out in front of the campsite. And but it was just a couple of crisscrossy pieces of wood, and I was like, "How do we light the fire?" And he's like, "Well, that's a whole other crafting thing. You have to have a recipe for how to make fire, and you have to have the tools that you need and the equipment that you need for making fire." And I was like, "Oh, you had me make a bonfire with no fire in it." So it was a little sad, and none of us had a recipe for how to make fire. So yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. But as we swapped around hosting responsibilities, other folks wanted to do a little fishing. Other folks wanted to just kind of explore. There was one of the people on our team who was the team leader for a bit and was like, let's run the perimeter of the island. So they wanted to see as much as they possibly could in that time. And it was big. I think that's probably the most surprising takeaway I have from the Animal Crossing demo is just how much real estate there is on that island. The 3DS edition is a relatively finite experience. It's pretty little.
Self-contained.
So it was exciting to see that there's so much real estate on this island, and kind of wheels were turning in my head for like, where do I put the shop? Where do I put the museum? Where does town hall going to go? Where's my house going to be? All that other stuff. So that was kind of fun. And then the last host wanted to play it was the Nintendo employee, and he's like, "I've been working on the same demo station all day. You guys should come see my museum." So he invited us to the museum. We all ran in, and he had filled in quite a few of the fossils and some of the bugs and stuff like that just through his many play sessions throughout the course of the day. And was showing off some of the fossils and stuff that he created. And the new museum is beautiful, and it's huge. And yeah, so it was kind of fun. It was, as anticipated, everything I kind of wanted from an Animal Crossing experience. I wish they had just sort of left me alone to kind of play with an island for 15 minutes.
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I've played these games before.
But I will have that experience in 14 days now, so it's not that far away. So it was kind of cool just to get a little...
What do you think that line was, the regular line to play the demo? Do you think you were waiting for 3 hours to play it?
Oh, I don't know. Every time I went near it, it was capped.
Every day. Yeah. They had...
So I don't know.
The cool thing they had is, which they had at other PAXs before, they don't always do a very good job advertising it, is they have that warp pipe pass, which is what we got to use. Sony has something similar. It only opens up once a day at like 4 or 5 p.m. You have to refresh your browser,
experience.
Be on it, and get in. And one of us, this guy, was able to get in there.
So yes, Erik was. There were 5 of us, I think, lined up. We had our phones in hand, and we're refreshing. And when we knew the passes for the Animal Crossing demo went on, not on sale, but became available.
Yeah,
and only one of us got in, and it was you.
Yep, and I was happy to let you play.
And you were kind enough,
that is your jam,
to send me a screenshot of your little barcode so that I could get in, and that was very nice of you.
Yeah, and they were there. Yeah. There was still a big line even for that.
Yeah, I waited in line to buy a sweatshirt in the morning, about an hour and a half.
Yeah, you probably waited 30 or 40 minutes to play the game. No, maybe like a half an hour.
Yeah, that wasn't too bad, but I had an appointment, so it was like show up at this time and you'll have an opportunity to play. So I think if I had just sort of lucked into a spot on the line, yeah, probably.
I remember at PAX West last year or the year before, they had the Nintendo's indie section, and the same sort of thing is got to get in the little pass things to get in, because or else you'd be waiting 4 hours to play the game. And
oh my god.
Well, yeah, I was able to go in and get the pass and play them. I was like, ooh, glad I didn't have to wait in that line.
That's nuts. The Animal Crossing booth was a sight, though. They really, I mean, Nintendo went all out for this thing. Nintendo was not showing any other games. They were only showing Animal Crossing. Every station had Animal Crossing on it.
Yep. They did have the Pokemon Sword and Shield thing upstairs that we walked
Oh, that's
by
right. They had a Pokemon thing in the lobby. Yeah.
So you could play that. Maybe they were just like showing it off. Maybe there was some sort of special event you could get a rare Pokemon or something. I don't really know because I don't
keep up with the Pokemons.
I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. But inside, yeah, the Animal Crossing, it really was the Animal Crossing booth. It was massive. It was easily the biggest booth in the convention center. And it was an entire sort of reproduction of a chunk of an Animal Crossing town, complete with a beach and a wooded area with giant trees. They had Kiki Slider and Isabelle and Tom Nook characters, people in costumes that they rotated out for.
All day long.
All day long, yeah. They had it was really cool because they had projectors in the ceiling that made it look like there was water running through a little river through the middle of the booth and washing up along the shore, along the edges of the booth. It was super cute and beautiful. And they had a house and a tent and a campfire and stuff like that. And I was like, this is the most adorable thing ever. So
it was pretty neat.
Yep.
It was
pretty impressive. And then after doing the demo, you had the opportunity to sort of be led through the stations to meet the characters and to have a photo op. And I passed on that.
You passed on the photo op?
I did not. Yeah, I like.
You're like, we're putting on our social media page.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm good.
No, I figured there were people behind me who were losing their mind, and I was like, oh well, let these people go through because I like the games. Clearly, I'm a fan of the games, and I'm excited about playing it. But I don't need a photo op with Tom Nook. I'm good.
Hey, yeah. That would be pretty funny.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed Animal Crossing, and that was well worth it to play and things like that.
Definitely.
What did you?
That was kind of the highlight for me. There really was. Every morning I kind of woke up and I was like, what do I want to see today? What do I want to do today? What's my plan of attack? And for the first 2 days, the only thing I was like, man, I got to play Animal Crossing at some point. So yeah.
The
was
one thing
nice
I wish PAX maybe did a little bit better. They have some of it in the app, but I've always wanted a list of games that are going to be there. I know the companies that are going to be there, but I want a list of the games. So I'd be like, oh, I want to play that. I want to play that. I want to play this. Because I never know, and I usually just waste a good chunk of time wandering around. Oh, they're showing that. I want to play it.
Yeah. Yeah, that assumes you know what those games are in advance. A lot of devs bring games I've never heard of or bring games that they have not announced even at that point. So that's that sort of element of surprise is nice. But yeah, it would be nice if there was something in the PAX app that was like a checklist, right? Check off every game that you played. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What did you play?
I played a lot.
You and I split up quite a bit. There was 1 or 2 days that we split quite a few times.
A couple hours wandered off their own thing. You went and did your thing, whatnot.
My Animal Crossing thing, yeah.
Hey, no judgment. You enjoyed it. It's all good.
Yeah,
I played mostly indie stuff. I wasn't really any big AAA stuff without the big companies being there that I really wanted to play.
Yeah.
A couple of things that really stuck out in my mind was that Artful Escape. Remember the music game with the chords? And I don't even know how to describe it. The protagonist has a guitar and you're like throwing these riffs and you're jumping around. It's a little bit of a rhythm game. And I had no idea what was going on most of the time. Like,
it was wacky.
I play the music and things happen. Platforming, jumping through the woods, everything lights up. It was very, very interesting. To me, that would be a very relaxing game, I think.
Yeah. And as you hit those chords, like things in the environment would respond. So as you sort of wail on the guitar, like fish would jump out of the ocean behind you, and the sun would pass in front of the moon, and there'd be a total eclipse. And meanwhile, you're kind of doing running, jumping, platforming stuff, and the guitar sort of motors that. So every time you hit a wail on the guitar, it sort of lifts you through the air and it boosts your jump.
And then there's a little puzzle piece where it was playing like little chords back to you, and you were playing it back. Trying to solve the puzzle. You had to like follow the rhythm. It's kind of neat, kind of interesting.
It was like Simon. You had to sort of match colors,
definitely,
right?
Definitely different. Very, very colorful.
Yeah, super colorful, beautiful graphics. The little handout we got at the booth said that it was a quest for a young musician to sort of find his stage persona. So I assume the hook of the game is that you roam sort of this mythical musical world, trying to figure out who do you want to be on stage. So yeah, maybe that's where kind of jamming along with some of those crazy monsters and weird characters and stuff like that comes from.
It looked fun to me. I had a good time. I picked it up and I'm thinking, this is really strange, but I couldn't put it down. I was like, oh, it's short, but I like the music. It's always an interesting element. The other stuff I played Metal Unit, which is a game from Nowquits, I think is how you say it. And it is a 16-bit Mega Man style platformer. You play as a robot. There's like little anime cut scenes. It's pretty intense. I really like the action. They had three little like pieces of the world you could explore, and if you finished it, they gave you a little pillow. I passed on the pillow, but I thought it was pretty challenging. But
it's not like you to pass on swag. That's surprising.
I don't want to do that pillow. And all I think about is how they've probably been sitting there touched by.
Oh,
people.
okay. You just had your health and safety in mind.
Yeah. And then across that same booth from Southpaw Games, they had Skull Hero Slayer, which is actually already out, I think, in early access on Steam. And that was a 16-bit platformer where you played as a guy with a skull for a head, and you could pick up different skulls and give you different powers. I ended up playing as like the archer and the werewolf, and it's a platformer, and there's enemies to fight and things to collect, and I really, really liked it. I was very interested. I played more than I should have, probably.
I tried that based on your recommendation. And it looked like Hollow Knight, which is a game that I think is beautiful, but I was terrible at. So I was like, no, I'm not going to play that. It's probably too hard. And you were like, no, it's not. Give it a shot. It's pretty accessible.
Yeah, it's not. It's not real.
Yeah, I played it, and yes, it definitely is sort of an aesthetic comparison to be made to Hollow Knight, but I think it's very much its own thing. The thing that I liked is that you and I had two different experiences, because the little skeleton that you play as can swap out his skull with other ones that he finds in the environment, and those give him different power-ups and abilities. So you got two different skulls from me, and we both had basically 4 variations on play styles that you could do. One of the ones that I picked up was like a big ox skull, one of the big like pointy horns ones. Yeah, and it turned me into from this little tiny skeleton into a giant brute, and I could just stomp through everybody and beat the snot out of them. And then later on. Cool. Yeah, I got a jester's skull, and it allowed me to juggle, and I could sort of throw knives and throw bones and stuff like that at other enemies, so you could do long-distance attacks. So yeah, like you said, it was kind of a platformer with a lot of combat and fighting and stuff like that, but it was pretty cool that it gave you different tools for kind of mixing up your playstyle.
And you can only pick 2 skulls at a time. There was one with the spear I played with a little bit, but I wanted to stick with like the ranged combat and have the werewolf that was close. The first skull you pick up, the one that you start with, you can actually throw it and then teleport to it. It makes some sort of interesting sort of combat setup. I thought that was kind of cool. I wondered what happened if you lost it, though. I was kind of thinking about that.
Don't lose your head, yeah.
I also played Gestalt. It's a steampunk Castlevania-like game. That was definitely more challenging than the other 2 games. It was from Sold Out Games, and it had some neat art style and some cool weapons, and you had a gun, a revolver, and a sword, but the demo was only like 10 minutes long, so I didn't make very much progress, and I didn't get a chance to like circle back around, but it definitely caught my eye with the art style and kind of like something a little bit different, playing as a female protagonist in that game.
Cool. Steampunk. People keep it steampunk alive.
Yeah. I mean, there was a pretty decent crowd around that. I had to wait a few times, probably like 5 to 10 minutes before I could play it, but I could tell. And the developer was asking me, what'd you think? Did you like this? Oh, try this. No, do this. And kind of helping me out a little bit because I got stuck in a couple places.
Cool. One of the games
what else did you play?
Played that I really liked. Finji was there. They're a publisher, I think. Yeah, they're a publisher, and they did A Night in the Woods, which is a game I adore. So I wanted to make my way over to them. Wanted to see if they had kind of any cool merch in their little shop, but they were also showing some of the other games that they were publishing. And one of the games that they have coming up is called Tunic. And this has been shown before. I remember seeing trailers for it at other gaming events and E3 and stuff like that. So it's kind of been in the works for a bit. And it looks like a I don't know how to describe it, like a Zelda game essentially, I think, but you play as a little fox,
That's what caught my eye.
Yeah. It's like voxel, so everything's kind of like pointy and fat in the middle, and it's sort of like a stacked or a tiered kind of diorama world, like what is comparable in terms of the Zelda, like A Link Between Worlds, that kind of aesthetic. But it was a similar. It was a very familiar kind of Zelda experience where you start off without a weapon and there's little monsters around and you have to run into a cave and pry open a treasure chest, and there's a sword inside, and then you run out and you can take out the monsters, and the monsters drop little coins, and presumably there's a level up or an option to get better swords and stuff like that as you progress. Yeah, he had a dodge, he had a roll. Eventually I got a shield, and it was very zippy. It was kind of fun. It was not super hardcore heavy on the combat. It was more about kind of exploration. You could use the sword to cut down bushes and trees and stuff like that, and some fun little secrets and little caves I explored were hidden behind those things.
Kind of scratched that 16-bit sort of Zelda itch, or maybe the handheld Zelda itch where you're just exploring, doing your thing. It's not combat heavy. I like that.
Yeah, it feels a little, it's not a platformer. It feels a little like a lo-fi kind of 3D game. But yeah, it was fun to sort of explore. And I think there were a couple of little doors and things like that I kind of went to where I was sort of like, geez, there was something probably cool behind that, but I just don't have the thing to get into it yet. So there was a bit of a kind of Metroidvania kind of, again, like Zelda structure to it, where if I get a tool later and come back to this, I can probably
say what it's coming to? I mean,
I asked and they said when it's done. So
yeah, you can add it to your Steam wish list. I just looked.
Oh, cool.
But it doesn't say, it doesn't have a release date. It says TBD. But
TBD.
You can buy, Skull is in early access, Hero Slayer. You can get that on Steam for like $14. And then Metal Unit is actually already out, and that's about $14 as well.
Cool. So yeah, Tunic is definitely super adorable and very charming, and it is absolutely the kind of game that I think I would have a lot of fun with. So I
added it to my list just based on your recommendation.
Eagerly anticipating Tunic, hopefully someday that sees the light of day.
Did you play anything that you were kind of like, well, I will not be buying this. This is not for me.
Yes, but I don't remember what those games are called. I think you and I probably both had that same experience, and I think I remember kind of at one point kind of rolling my eyes and walking away from a booth, but I don't remember what that game was.
What was that game you played that's supposed to be like Breath of the Wild? What was that called? You're telling me about that?
Oh, Genshin Impact.
Yeah. That was on your little list to play. And
yeah.
I could tell you weren't that interested.
It's okay. It's very much just Breath of the Wild, but with kind of like pretty anime ladies instead of Link.
There's something for everybody.
Yeah, big open world, tons of exploration, 3D roaming, lots of combat, just sort of animals and monsters and guards and stuff like that you fight. The combat was fun. I feel like there's probably more layers to it than I got from the demo. There's a big like cooking kind of pot upgrade thing that you can do, which is very Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of a ripoff of Breath of the Wild, but I like Breath of the Wild, so maybe I would have more fun with another game that was kind of like that. It's a little not subtle about where it takes its inspiration from, though. But yeah, that's called Genshin Impact. That is soon, I think that's coming out. It was fine. It looked nice. It ran great. I guess
one of the first games
you have to decide for yourself how offended you are that they just stole that from Zelda.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the first games I saw and stopped at was I was walking through the indie booth when we first got there, and I saw that Postal 4 was there. Postal games they're FPS games, and they're super, super violent. That's what they're known for. Big in the 90s, over the top. They have like a working like beta or alpha of Postal 4, and I played it for 10 minutes, and yeah, just not really my thing anymore. I mean, it's just nothing, just running around, killing everybody, destroying things. I was like, I'm sure for some people it ran great, and I'm sure for some people it'll be right up their alley, but for me, it's kind of like, well, it's not for me. But I'm glad they were there demoing it. There's more people interested.
It's interesting that those, some of those kind of 90s games that appeared to not have been aging well, think Doom, think Wolfenstein, think Yeah, those are probably the first two that kind of pop into my head. Have had a bit of a renaissance, so it would be interesting to sort of see if the world is ready for kind of a new and improved Postal experience.
and some reason and other things I've seen is there's a game called Ion Fury that came out earlier last year, and it was made by 3D Realms, and it's a 100%. Well, looks like it was made in the mid '90s using what Duke Nukem 3D was crafted in, and it got really good reviews, and people loved it. So
there's a hunger for that in game.
Yeah, like this resurgence, maybe something a little bit different than your standard FPS game.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Speaking of running around and killing everyone, I played a really fun game where you get to do that at the Devolver booth called Carrion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think you and I watched a chunk of this for a bit, and then you went off to a panel, and I was going to stick around and try to take a shot at playing it.
I'm glad you got a chance to play. I'd seen that game before, and it
was
I was like, ooh.
Lot of fun. It's really, really cool. I had a good time. It is... It's gruesome. It is a grody game. You are, it's a Metroidvania 2D kind of puzzle platformer.
Experiment gone wrong.
But you are a science experiment gone wrong. You're a crazy creature with lots of like blood red tentacles coming out of you that escapes from a lab. And you start the game underground. The demo did allow you to sort of get above ground to outside. And there's guards everywhere and scientists everywhere, and you escape. And the game tells you immediately, it says you will get bigger and stronger if you eat humans. So every time you bust down a door, and you violently bust down a door with your many tentacled monster, humans run in panic and run in terror and fear, and you just whip out an arm and grab them and pull them towards the center of your little biomass and munch them down, and you get bigger and stronger, and you can knock down heavier walls and take on guards with flamethrowers and rocket launchers and guns and grenades and stuff like that, and all the while trying to sort of upgrade to be able to get away from your captors and get out of this science lab. It was super fast. It was super gory. But man, the look of this sort of quivering, like tentacled monster thing just tearing through the lab and munching up everybody in it was very exciting and kind of fun.
Devolver always has like such an interesting show and interesting things to show. That was the first time I had seen, not this PAX, but several PAXs ago, probably West, maybe it was South. This was the first time I saw Hotline Miami. I had only briefly heard of it because they're behind that game. I was like, what's this? Neon colors and the soundtrack? Oh, it's super violent. I need to check this out. Yeah. And I love Hotline Miami. It is easily one of my favorite games of all times.
Cool.
Time in the recent 10 years or so. But they always have. Did you see anything that you didn't get a chance to play? Was there anything you walked by, you tried to go back again, and it just wasn't a chance for you to play it at all?
Yeah. Oh, well, that last game, just to reiterate, was called Carrion. And there is a demo of that on Steam right now. The full game is not out yet, but the developers have released, I guess Devolver has released a little taste of it that you can play. I think DJ actually talked about on the show that he had played that in the past. So that's out there. That's in the world. I'm not sure if that's the same demo they had at PAX, but that is a very cool game that I probably would have a lot of fun with. For anyone who played Inside, and I think I asked you at the show, you've not played Inside, right?
Nope.
That's one of the sort of the shadowy kind of 2D games that Playdead made. It looks like Limbo.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the end of that.
I'm aware of it.
The end of that, and I won't spoil this for anybody who's not seen it, but the last 10-15 minutes of that game remind me very much of the entire experience playing Carrion. So if you've played Inside, dear listeners, and you know what the hell I'm talking about, then maybe you should check out this game because you'd probably dig it.
And next to Devolver, they're also known for Enter the Gungeon. They had a light gun setup playing an arcade cabinet of Enter the Gungeon. I was like, whoa, that looks really neat. But they were competitions on it over all weekend, yeah. Yeah, but the line was pretty decent most of the time. It looked, I don't know if that's ever going to come to anything. It just was really neat looking and caught my eye.
Yeah. So to your previous question, was there anything I wanted to play that I didn't get a chance to? There were a couple of games that I wanted to get time with, but only had a couple of demo stations, and anytime I went anywhere near them, they were just packed. So there was a game called I think it was called A Garden Story.
Oh yeah,
you remember me kind of looping back to that like 5 or 6 times?
Passed by a couple times, and it kind of reminded me of like a little bit like Animal Crossing, a little like cuteness factor up to 10. I'm like, it looks like something you'd want to play.
Yeah, Animal Crossing mixed with Stardew Valley, so very much in that kind of aesthetic, with cute little woodland creatures and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this looks like a Randy game, but yeah, could not get anywhere near it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a pretty small station.
Yeah,
they only had a couple demo.
There was another one
areas
that sort of was in that genre of kind of cozy games called Rolling Hills, and it was you run a sushi shop and you roll sushi, and I was like, oh, that looks kind of fun and sort of distracting. That would be cool too. But again, also could not get anywhere near that station. So yeah, sadly, there were a couple of games that I wanted to try that I just couldn't get anywhere near.
Well, it happens, unfortunately. It's just the way PAX is, and sometimes you can't play everything you want to play. If you would have, you could have gone 4 days, right?
Yes, I could have gone a 4th day, but I was already angry on my 3rd day, so I think
I was tired after day 2.
Yeah. 3 days is too much. Two is not quite enough. So I don't know how to balance that at all.
Oh, did you go? How about any panels? Were there any cool panels you checked out that you thought were worth mentioning?
There were. What did we do? We did a couple of panels. There was one that I really liked on. Speaking of cozy games, it was called "The Case for Cozy Games," and it was a panel of folks who make or curate kind of wholesome games or cozy games, or however you want to sort of describe them. And these are games that are not necessarily ones that are, your Call of Duties of the world. They are more like the Animal Crossing variety of games that are a little more kind of touchy-feely, a little more kind of low pressure. They had a little trouble sort of kind of pinpointing what like the definition of a cozy game or a wholesome game was, but we all sort of agreed that when we knew it, we liked it, and when we saw it, we knew what it was, and we liked it. And the people on the panel all had recommendations for games that were sort of in that genre.
Yeah, like cozy, friendly, so maybe you can relax and enjoy the game. And a lot of the people on the panel kind of shared their experiences about what they thought what a cozy game was, and how they kind of got into that. Interested in that sort of genre or subgenre.
It was interesting because they made a distinction between cozy games and wholesome games, and that if your experience playing a game makes you feel cozy, makes you feel safe, makes you feel welcome and accepted, it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of an Animal Crossing kind of experience. It can be, somebody used the example of like Destiny or Anthem, that just sort of hanging out with their buddies in that game was like home to them, was cozy to them, was a place where they felt like...
One of them gave an example of with Destiny and things like that, and I thought that was an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. Well, they sort of pointed out, obviously, that Destiny you wouldn't necessarily think was a wholesome game, but that your experience in playing it and being sort of welcomed by your friends and by that community in that game was a place where you felt cozy, where you felt safe. So yeah, it is about, in a lot of ways, from a cozy game perspective, sort of finding places that are kind of safe spaces. They talked a lot about representation, where people really kind of identify with a game when they find a character like themselves in it. And I think that was kind of interesting. Or that they find a community that feels kind of welcoming to them. So yeah, and then the distinction, obviously, with wholesome games is games that sort of can be described as wholesomes are ones that aren't necessarily sort of the gun games of the world, that are a little more kind of mechanically pure. So they, again, all had recommendations and stuff like that, and I furiously scribbled down every game that they recommended, and there were a lot of games that I've already played, which was cool too. So
you're going to have to share that list and put it in the Discord or on Twitter or something, because I
definitely
had to leave that panel early to go catch my plane.
Yeah, I did. I took screenshots of all of the games that they recommended, with the intent of kind of digging deeper into that on the show, obviously, but I will have to come back to that in the future. It definitely is a little niche that I'm intrigued by. So there's games that we talked about, like Rolling Hills was one of the games they recommended. There's what was the one? Animal Crossing, of course, came up. A Short Hike, which we've reviewed and talked about on the show. Yoku's Island Express, which is a game I've talked about on the show. So yeah, there's a lot of games in
what
here.
What about like Firewatch? Did they recommend that?
Firewatch didn't come up. That's probably a good idea, though. I would feel like that.
I'm trying to think of the only games. Actually, what else is really Flame in the Flood for me was very like soothing. I really enjoyed it, even though it's a game roguelike about survival. I like the music and the art style, and it was just there needs to be more like cozy, relaxing games in this world.
I don't know if I would call that wholesome. There were some pretty high stakes in Flame of the Flood, and the fact that it was a roguelike and you could die at any time was a little scary. I like that game too, though. I'm a fan of that. There was that developer was showing their new game.
What was the new one they were showing?
Drake's Hollow.
Yeah,
and it was a 4-player combat thing. We watched it briefly. It was surprising to me that it was the same developer because it does not bear any sort of visual similarity to the Flame in the Flood. But they were there too. But anyways, that Cozy Games panel was really cool. That was a good time, and there were a ton of recommendations that came out of that. And it was just interesting to sort of see, like, I've never thought about kind of my interest in games and how they're kind of compartmentalized. It's easy for me to say to sort of, I like games like Animal Crossing, or I like RPGs, or I like whatever. But to sort of think of the games that I like in terms of kind of the emotion they evoke, or the kind of the space that I go to when I play them, is a different way of kind of compartmentalizing the games that I play. So it was cool. It was a very, very informative panel. I liked it a lot.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. I wish I would have been able to see the whole thing. Probably the one panel I went to.
More than anything, you just missed the Q&A at the end, which is always the worst part of every panel. So.
No. Yeah. I really liked the Beta 64 panel, and that he was talking. He's a famous YouTuber, well-known YouTuber, and he was talking about like undeveloped games and like maybe games that had changed. He showed us like Glover 2 for the N64 and what Donkey Kong 64 used to look like, kind of like a demo build of it and some things like that. And he answered a lot of questions. I didn't know who he was, but went there with a couple of friends of ours that were at the show. Like, you like this panel? And I was like, all right, well, it looks pretty interesting to me. So I learned a few things.
And it was video footage of like early versions of games or abandoned games?
Yeah, like the video footage of Glover 2, which was a platformer that was in the mid-90s and it was supposed to come out on N64 and a couple other systems. And they had like scrapped it, and they were like 60 or 70% of the way. They had 60 or 70% of the way finished with it. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, he was showing off all these weird glitches, and he had 2 different builds and things like that. And the Donkey Kong stuff he showed was really interesting. The Donkey Kong 64 about what it might have been. So he had a couple builds of that and how things were different, and kind of decided to take things in a different way. And it was really interesting. He made it entertaining, and he took questions from the audience and stuff, which is always important.
Cool.
What other panels did we go to?
We did the musical history of Zelda.
Yes, that one was good.
That was good. Yeah, and there was.
I didn't know any of the trivia.
No, I guess my knowledge of Zelda does not go that molecular, unfortunately. But it was the folks that run Zelda. I think it's called ZeldaDungeon.net. It's a Zelda fan site, and they kind of went through in an hour like the history and the origin of many of the themes and musical pieces that came out of the Zelda series. And they actually had a couple of the folks who performed on the game that came out last year, the Crypt of the Necrodancer. What was that called?
Are you thinking of the concerts, or are you thinking of the Crypt of the Necrodancer? The
Crypt of the Necrodancer style video game. That was all Zelda stuff.
Yeah, it was. I can't.
I feel real dumb for not remembering that, but
because we talked about this, because you do not care for that game.
It's really hard, and I'm not good at it. No, I like the music. Yeah,
the music is interesting.
Yeah, but they were there too, and on the panel.
Cadence of Hyrule.
There you go, Cadence of Hyrule. So yeah, they went way back. They showed the first thing they showed was the very first commercial for Zelda 1 on the NES a million years ago, and they said this is probably the first sort of sighting of Zelda-inspired music, and it was two white kids rapping about Zelda. And
Pretty funny.
yeah, it kind of broke Zelda down into a couple different generations based on kind of when the games came out, and played little clips from all of them and some of the themes and stuff like that, interspersed with some trivia questions where they would play a chunk of a tune and try to get folks from the audience to guess what game it came from.
And you and I would just sit there and blink pretty much because we had no idea for the most part.
No, there was some girl behind us who was very enthusiastic about it and knew everything, and I was like,
she knows her stuff.
No, I'm not that good. It all sounds like Zelda to me. That's the closest I can get.
Yeah, my knowledge of Zelda, I would say 8-bit, 16-bit, and then it drops off significantly until the 3DS stuff. Because I didn't play any on the N64. Oh. I know, terrible gamer. And I didn't play any of the things on the Wii or the GameCube, even though I own Twilight Princess. Yeah. But it's just, more things for me to play.
One. Twilight Princess is the one to skip, I think. But, yeah, that might be a battle for the ages.
Everybody tells me, I'll play Wind Waker.
Wind Waker. So, gotta play Wind Waker.
Gotta like the cel-shadedness.
Yeah. That's a good one. But the soundtrack's really good, too. So it was this whole panel about Zelda music through the years, and that was fun. It was more of a kind of like experience rather than one where it was like, oh, here's a lot of interesting things I didn't know. So yeah, I some panels are like, stimulating from a brain standpoint and get me thinking about games in different ways and teach me things I didn't know. And this one was more of a sort of an appreciation of all things musical in Zelda over the years, which is fine. That's cool. I'm down with the fandom.
There you go.
Yeah.
And who knows, you might have learned something when you were at the panel, right?
I don't know if I did or not, but yeah.
How was, of course, when you go to PAX, you gotta stop by the Cookie Brigade. How were your cookies from the Cookie Brigade?
Surprisingly light on vegan options.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I suspect I'm not the only vegan at PAX, but they only had one cookie for me, and it wasn't really even a cookie.
It was not good.
It was mochi. It was kind of gooey.
That doesn't count. That's not a cookie.
Not cookie.
But yeah, Cookie Brigade's always good. They donate. They go get a couple cookies.
Yeah.
Donate a little bit of money. All the money goes to Child's Play, I believe, right?
I believe, yes, and they were saying this year that they across assorted PAXs with people donating cookies and then buying money, donating money to get cookies, they've raised somewhere in the ballpark of $600,000 for charity.
And this year, the ones at PAX East looked like they were all professional made for the most part, right?
Yeah, there were a bunch of different ones, and but yeah, the bulk of them seemed to be...
Versus when I went to PAX West last year, they still had that kind of homemade look.
Very homemade,
baggy sort of look. But I think there's just different policies for different conventions and what you can do.
Yeah, there was some battle in the past between the Cookie Brigade and the people who actually sell food at the convention center for PAX East, and I don't know the details of it, but I guess the concession that they kind of came up with was the Cookie Brigade doesn't roam anymore.
Yeah,
historically they used to be able to sort of tweet at them, going, "Hey, listen, I'm waiting in line for this panel.
I'm in line for
bring cookies," and they would come deliver them to you like Uber Eats, but they had a room this time. You had to go to the cookie room to be able to get cookies from them.
They were out a little bit. I saw them a little bit by some of the bigger panels.
Oh,
but
cool.
Other than that, they weren't on the show floor at all.
Kind of keeping it on the DL, huh?
Yeah, they had the room, that little tiny booth that was shared with that other game that was really hard to get to.
Oh, okay. I do remember that.
We walked by a couple times, where are the cookies? They're in the corner with this little sign, and we're I can't get to them.
Secret cookies. Yeah.
But that's always a good cause, and always good to see people volunteer with that.
Yeah. And who doesn't love a good cookie?
I did. I had 4 of them. They were amazing.
Speaking of good causes, there is a game that you and I checked out, and we talked to the developers, and we wanted to share on the show, called Rescue Pets. It is a mobile game. It's a clicker. It's a clicker game. DJ loves a good clicker. He should definitely download this one. And in it, you run an animal rescue, and you have a cute pet. Now it's just dogs. You will have cats eventually if you're a cat person. And you can dress them up in cool costumes and stuff like that, and they help you run your rescue.
I will be doing that. I cannot resist dressing animals in costumes.
Who can? I love a dog in a tiny sweater. So yeah, you kind of idly go through and click, and make some decisions and dress up your dog. And they've partnered with real animal charities, real animal shelters, to donate some of the money that they make from the game to animal rescues. So it actually
really
goes towards helping real pets. Yeah, and they had pictures hanging up in the booth of all the animals that they've helped, like the real animals, like real cats and dogs that have benefited from this game.
So got adopted. I'm like, yay!
Yeah. So I talked to one of the developers, and he was like, "Oh, this little dog right here was one of the first ones that we rescued, and it was a dachshund. And I have a house full of dachshunds, so we were very excited about that." And I told him about my dogs, and he told me about his dogs, and it was just a nice bonding moment. So I want to shout out Rescue Pets. If you're an animal lover, if you like a good clicker game, definitely hit up iOS or Android.
Colorful, easy to play.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong.
Pretty low stakes, and it has a good real world impact for your time spent. So look for Rescue Pets on your mobile shop of choice. Yeah,
I will definitely be playing it in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I think it's a good game for a little bit of downtime. Trying to think, was there anything else that I saw that was really interesting? Oh, Mega Cat Studios is there. They are always there at every PAX. They're a little developer on the on the eastern side of the United States, or southeast United States, and they had Bite the Bullet, which is a 16-bit shooter. It's interesting, but you eat when you destroy your enemies. You eat them, and you can like gain weight and gain abilities. And if you eat too much of one kind of enemy, you become like lethargic and fat. And it's really kind of an interesting concept. It's not out yet; they're still working on it. But I played that before, and I made sure to stop by and play it again to see if anything had really changed. But yeah, if you like that sort of thing, 16-bit shooter with a little bit of a different sort of twist to it, I would recommend checking that game out.
There was one, and this will be my last one that I want to sort of mention in the show, a game that I kind of just played and at the kind of end of my PAX experience. It was this, I had walked past the booth, and I had seen the booth 5 or 6 times as I sort of streamed past, and this was the first time I actually sort of stopped and watched somebody play it. And it's called Hard Space Shipbreaker, which is a mouthful. But what the hook here is that you are a spaceship salvage person, and you have an army of tools at your disposal, and you go out into the universe and break down derelict, abandoned spaceships. And every part, you have a list of parts that you're searching for, and they all have different values, and you have to carefully go through your tools and dissect these spaceships in kind of creative ways, safe ways, so that you can salvage the components of them. And there's mechanics to all of them that are still in place. Some of the ships may still have active nuclear reactors, may still have crew on board, may still have on, things like that. And you have to sort of deal with those things and dismantle the ship in a way that doesn't ruin other parts of it that could otherwise be salvaged and sold. Yeah, it was just kind of interesting, kind of watching people play it for a little bit and kind of wrap their brain around what their objectives were and what the tools did. And then to get my hands on it and to kind of go, okay, here's my shopping list. Here's this derelict spaceship. And you're at zero gravity, so you're kind of zooming around the universe and kind of floating around, and you go inside and gravity will be off, and you'll be kind of upside down, like sawing away at a thing with like a line cutter from Dead Space, trying to dismantle the core and get it off into space before it goes full meltdown. It was cool. It was this weird thing where like no enemies showed up, no monsters showed up, there were no aliens at any point, but it was this thing where you're like, this has value somehow, and there's a puzzle in kind of dismantling it and trying to get the value out of it. And the dev I talked to quickly said that you start the game kind of in debt. You're indebted to the company that has hired you. And every part that you dismantle gets you further and further out of debt until you become kind of a free man and you own all your stuff. Yeah, kind of an interesting perspective. He said that Earth in this version of the game is uninhabitable. Nobody wants to live there. So you look for the first opportunity you can to get off planet. So you took the opportunity from this company to go billions of credits into debt. And now you have to pay it off by working for it. So I'm like, oh, that's a little dark, but it was kind of fun to kind of go through and kind of dissect some of the puzzles of how to dismantle these ships.
Well, it sounds like interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on it. What was it called again?
Hard Space Shipbreaker.
Hard Space
It is a mouthful of a title. I don't think it's out yet. I believe they were still kind of working on it.
See if I can find it on Twitter.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how completely random, but we walked by. I think remember Gearbox's little booth, and it was constantly busy with people trying to get the swag they were giving out, which was like it was either stickers, a mask from Borderlands series, which they give out at every show, or a Borderlands swag bag that's empty, and people go nuts for that stuff.
Yeah, that swag bag was everywhere, man. It was
staring at you.
It was a giant bandit face done in the style of kind of the Persistence of Time with the guy with his. No, it's not Persistence of Time. What's the? No, it is Persistence, right? With the guy with the hands on the side of his face and he's yelling.
Yeah, you're right.
It was a bandit painted like that, and it just said "mood." And it was a backpack, so billions of people all over PAX had this giant bandit face that said "mood" on their back everywhere I went. And like you said, there was always a line for people trying to get the free backpack.
Well, it's people love swag, and the thing is, the last couple of PAX we've been to is, I mean, you'll get a pin here and there, maybe a free code for the most part, but even Penny Arcade themselves really has done away with the swag bag. It's all digital.
Yeah.
And just, the days of where you would come home with 4 bags full of T-shirts that you'd never wear is long gone.
Well, maybe I think you just solved it, Cube. I think what's the I don't know. What do you do with all that stuff?
Wear.
How many T-shirts do I
have
need?
stuff. I have stuff in my that I've hung on to. I don't know, like 5 or 6 shirts I've hung on to sit in the closet. I barely wear them. And I'm like, well, they're there. Glad I got them, but what was the point?
A relic of a forgotten age.
There we go.
Do you have a final game or a final thought you want to recommend, or did we get through your list?
No, we got through my list. Everything was good. Cool. I keep thinking about that Artful Escape, though. I'm really going to have to watch that.
Yeah. That is, I think initially it's an Xbox exclusive. So for those of you who have Xboxes, that game is coming your way. That was the only logo I saw anywhere on their booth.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if with Game Pass, maybe we could play it on PC. Oh,
there you go.
It is coming to Windows, though.
Oh, cool. All right.
Oh, interesting. It's supposed to be coming to iOS as well. That's interesting. And Mac. But,
cool.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on.
All right. So what is your next PAX experience, Eric?
That is always a question. I will probably... I don't know when I'm going to go back to East. I like East, but for somebody who lives in the Pacific Northwest, that is the longest trek for me.
Yeah.
The most of flying and driving. And usually the weather is pretty crummy. This year, weather was okay. Weather
it seems to get earlier and earlier every year, and at some point
decent.
It's just going to be like the day after Christmas. I don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
2017 was terrible. And every time I think about East, I think about that. I will try to go to PAX West this summer. It's the first weekend in September this year, not the last weekend in August. So there's a little bit more window there. And I'm planning to go to PAX South in 2021, but we'll see how it shakes out. Good old San Antonio, 60 degrees in January.
That's the way to do it, right?
It's warm. I like it.
I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for me in PAX. I feel increasingly like just sitting and watching trailers on YouTube could pretty much replace this experience for me. So
or if someone live streamed all the. I think they were doing a lot of that too, like live streaming a lot of the bigger panels.
Oh yeah, they do the panels. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. It's expensive, and I live closer than you do, and I don't have to travel nearly as far. But it's a huge trek to get out to Boston, and to stay in Boston alone is just crazy expensive. And to eat and drink all weekend in Boston, and yeah, I don't know how many more of these I have left in me. So I think I will have to seriously reconsider how I spend my money and how often and frequently I go to PAX in the future. It's nice to hang out with everybody, sort of being amongst my people and catching up with internet friends and stuff like that is always a good time. So I will miss the social aspect of it. But man, being in that convention hall just after 12 hours of walking around is tough. It's really hard.
Yeah, I can just feel myself drained at the end of the day. And my feet are like, ooh.
Yep.
But yeah, maybe it's one of those things where
we're too old.
Yeah,
man.
We're getting too old.
Yeah.
It's a young man's game.
So let's wrap this thing up. Where can people find you on the internet if they choose to?
You can find me on Twitter at Cube00. That's KUBE00. I also have my own podcast and website, and you can find that at the-gamers-lounge.com. We do reviews, usually Sometimes we do a little bit of hardware reviews, but we usually have a bi-monthly podcast. We also have a retro podcast on there as well.
Cool.
And that's how you can get a hold of me.
Excellent.
That's where I exist on the internet.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you existed in Boston with me over the weekend. It was fun hanging out with you.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, thanks for popping up on the show. Always a pleasure to have a guest on here. DJ will be back next week, though. If anyone is missing him, I suspect he's feverishly playing, I don't know what, Death Stranding right now, probably.
Probably. Wasn't he going to try to finish it? I think he's going to power through it, right?
I think so. I think he's desperate to see the end of it, so I'm not sure. I don't think DJ has the ability to power through anything.
He just takes his time.
He takes his time, yeah. But we'll see. We'll see where he's at next week when he's back. In the interim, if you need any more video game hangover in your brain, definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover or head to our blog at VGHangover.com. Definitely hop into our Discord. I'm on there. DJ's on there. Cube is on there.
Yep.
We were posting pictures from PAX over the weekend and stuff like that. So definitely hop into the Discord and have participate in that conversation. I'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
And this is Eric.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.